Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Weekly Wake Up. This is always your opportunity for you to talk as employees of the Lake Valley School District to our amazing staff. Today, we're going to actually be diving into talking to teacher librarians about the work that they do. Next week, we're going to be talking to leaders in regards to, Rob Anderson and other leaders in regards to the year as it was and what to kind of look ahead for next year. We're going to call that the wrap up. But I'm really excited to be able to talk to teacher librarians who are amazing and enterprising about the way that they've helped their schools and the district navigate learning during the pandemic. Before we dive in, I do want to put in a plug. Oh, I just was talking about last week's show. I'm bouncing around here, so I kind of already hit that. Again, for next week's show, we will be talking about the strategic plan a little bit, the reorganization of the academic team. We'll also be, again, kind of looking at ways that teachers and employees can be involved as we continue this work over the summer and into next school year. So we definitely want to encourage you to join us. And before I get off of this screen, I do want to just mention, as always, we are taking questions through the course of the show. If you've got something that you want to ask, you can just ask it at bit.ly. That's bit.ly/BVSD Wake Up. Again, that's bit.ly/BVSD Wake Up. I know that everybody's got, sort of foggy eyes this morning, given the fact that it's a really kind of rainy day. Hopefully everybody had a really great weekend, though. It was pretty sunny, I think, most of the weekend. Got out and did some gardening with my wife, and so practicing soccer with my kids and all that kind of stuff before it got all rainy yesterday. So anyhow, I do want to go around. If you guys have ever watched this, especially the ones that we've done with teachers, my favorite part is when we get a chance to let them talk to us about not only one of their best things that have ever happened, but also the idea of, sort of their first pancake, that pancake that you do, the griddle's not quite warm enough or it's too warm, and suddenly you've got, burnt pancake. You usually learn from that. You adjust the griddle and all the rest of the pancakes turn out awesome after that. And I know it's a little bit like that in teaching. It certainly is in communication. And so, I'm going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves a little bit. And then, share either that best moment, that aha thing that they learned, or a burnt pancake. And I'll start with Jared from El Dorado. Good morning, Jared.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having all of us here today. My name is Jared Riesel. I'm the teacher librarian here at El Dorado Pre-K through 8 in Superior, and I'm happy to be here. This year was definitely full of ups and downs and plenty of pancakes. Start a diner, maybe. There's a good morning. One thing that I think overall went well, despite there being a lot of logistical challenges and other challenges, was offering Battle of the Books to our students here in grades 3 through 8. I see it as a celebration, but also something that was kind of stressful throughout the year. It was a logistical challenge, and this started way back in the fall and just now wrapped up a couple weeks ago here at the district level. But trying to rotate books to students and communicate things and keep everybody on a schedule and offering practice opportunities and team meetings and book clubs and all this sort of thing. It was a lot. So I made a number of mistakes at the beginning and a lot of assumptions, planning things out, and only to realize that my plans weren't going to work with the situation. All in all, we got through to the end of it, and students and families were grateful for the opportunity. So that was my, I'll call it a failing forward pancake situation for the year.
I love that. And I love the idea of it being a diner because, this was the last 14 months or so has been craziness. Everything's been kind of a learning deal. And I think you're absolutely right. Like the idea of, you can't just check in with the kid in the hallway or, hey, how's that book going? Like you have to really, I know I've heard from several teachers that idea of the check-ins is just really tough when you're in like remote learning or, in a hybrid situation for sure. So
yeah, definitely. And it was a real partnership with teachers and families as well to make something that big happen with that many students across grade levels and classes and stuff. So, I think everybody really pulled it together as a whole and made it a success.
And I know that Angel and those guys, when they did the big event, yet another kind of one of those learning opportunities when got everybody on a Google Meet. It's a little crazy with so many students. And anyway, they did a great job with that as well. Bobby, you're over at Crestview. How's it going over there?
I'm also running a diner. I didn't realize that Jared and I both started the same side gig this year. No, like all of us, I mean, lots of ups and downs. And I mean, I think a positive is, I think it's amazing to see everyone's resilience. You know, teachers have just really stepped up, and you just roll with what you have. And I think kids have done that exceptionally. I mean, as we've, you know, had COVID protocols, the kids can only play on certain parts of the playground and only with certain kids. And in the library, as we'll talk about today, there's all sorts of rules that kids aren't used to, and they just kind of go with it, and they enjoy what's there, which I think is great. My pancake, I'm going to try to make this story short. It doesn't really have anything to do with COVID or anything like that, but it was definitely a fail in that trying to get kindergartners to really have some ownership and learn about the library, where the books are placed and how to be more independent finding them. And so in the last couple weeks, I've had some kindergartners, when the classes are in here, like find a book out of place or on the floor, and they'll bring it up to me, you know, and we have like stickers on the books, and I'll say, hey, that's in the wrong bin. Can you go find the right bin? Right. And so they go put it in the right bin. And I gave a couple kids a scratch and sniff bookmark, right? Thinking, wow, look at this. I'm building this autonomy. The next week, no kidding, no less than 5 kids are bringing me all these books. They're just grabbing them from the shelves. And they're like, Mr. Lehman, the woolly mammoth book is next to the dinosaurs. It's in the wrong place. And then somebody else is like, I found a butterfly book next to the moths. And I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, they are randomly pulling them off the shelf, which I'll have to reshelve just so they can get the scratch and sniff bookmarks. And what a fail. So I ordered some more scratch and sniff bookmarks.
That's a good solution. I mean, if you got something that's selling like hotcakes, to keep with our analogy for a minute here, why not keep with it, right? At least they're picking up books and realizing that the butterfly book is right there too. Maybe that will find a new interest for them for sure. That's great.
Right.
Lizzie, you're over at Emerald, right?
I am, and even over there, I've heard about your scratch and sniff bookmarks from my son who goes to Crestview.
Wow! All right, well, I have some more.
Yeah, so I'm at Emerald, and I've just been blown away by the tackling of the digital divide that's happened this year, and the leveling up of teacher skills, family skills, student skills, and it has been blood, sweat, and tears to get to where we are. But the digital divide has been really real. Like, some kids sit down with the computers and they are Chromebooks and they can teach themselves almost. And then other kids, it's like they need some deep interventions. So figuring out what that might look like at a system level for our school was like a big thing we took on, and we had a lot of success. I've shared my phone number. I've FaceTimed, with families, like, show me your keyboard. And then on the flip side of that, my pancake moment is I did a staff training at the beginning of the year around technology and digital integration and some of this new stuff. And my wireless went out at my house like 10 minutes before. So, I think we've all had those moments where we're not quite in the meet we're supposed to be in or whatnot. And, it's like, here again. And then, people are just awesome. I had our counselor sent my presentation to the counselor, and he presented so I could take my camera off, and, just punting, a lot of punting, pancake moments, failing forward. But
you'd never have an idea of, like, I had that happen in our house. Like, suddenly the Wi-Fi is out, and you're like, you're just sort of stranded out there. And I think that it will have some, impact to how we think about, like, a power outage now is okay. Well, it's nothing compared to not having a Wi-Fi and a Google Meet, right? That kind
right.
So,
And I think everyone's very forgiving. Everyone gets that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about what you were saying too is that the best I've heard teachers say that the best thing that's happened is that now they're in better touch with their parents. They feel like they could text them or whatever. And the worst thing that that's happened during this whole thing is now the parents have their cell phone numbers. And so
yeah, I think as a teacher librarian, it's nice because they're not calling me. They needed me for that one connectivity thing, and now they're like, bye, see you.
yeah, versus like an everyday, like, hey, I'm Johnny needs this or whatever. Yeah. Kim, you work with both Birch and Creekside, right?
Yes, I am I'm half-time at each school. So I'm currently doing about every other day between the two schools. I was exempt the first part of the year. So I was doing all of that from home. I would just go into different meets. And so that was also an interesting challenge, was trying to figure out how to do curbside checkout when I wasn't actually in the building. So thankfully, I had some amazing help at one of my schools. And so I had a parent over there who was able to, even though library was new to her, I was able to do quite a lot of training with her, and we managed to start getting books out to kids reasonably soon. Maybe not as soon as we would have liked. So I would say a big success was the menus that Lauren came up with. I took those and ran with them. And goes along with the whole diner thing, right? We had these really awesome menus for the little kids who might have been having a harder time using the library lookup. But I also embraced the opportunity to teach the kids the library lookup in a way that I hadn't before. So that was pretty great too. I was really excited to devote some time to that with kids when I have in the past, it was sort of suddenly very crucial that they know how to do it. So that was also a really great opportunity. And yeah, everybody has their different fails. I had a tree fall on my house and my electricity went out, so I had to drive to a nearby library, use the internet just to contact everyone to let them know what was going on. So yeah, I've definitely been through, everybody has been through such a bizarre year, I guess.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we have learned all about flexibility during this very strange year.
Yes, learning how to just run with a new situation at a moment's notice.
Absolutely. Thank you. Shoshana, you're over at Centaurus.
I am. So hi, I'm Shoshana Turgill, the teacher librarian at Centaurus High School. And I think we managed to stay, just like everyone is sharing, just adjust and stay flexible throughout the year in a way that really benefited our students. So it's not really a single thing that went well, but more of a mindset, I think. Like when we were fully remote, like everyone's saying, we had to advertise electronic resources, talk to parents, talk to students. The type of outreach looked really different because you couldn't just tap someone on the shoulder to get their attention. And we were able to set up curbside checkout as well. And then when we return to school, I think it looks just a little bit different at the high school level because students can usually come and go in the library space. And so like the space was carved apart so that like there were between 3 and 6 virtual classes taking place in the library every single period. But I'm really proud that we were able to keep part of the library open for students who just had free periods. And I think like they really appreciated having the library space, and it was so rewarding to see them come and use the space and show gratitude for being in the space. And so that was just wonderful. And it took a lot of collaboration on the part of like our admin team, just figuring out COVID protocols that would work for everyone. So that was really wonderful. And to contribute to the diner enterprise, I do quite a bit of co-teaching. And so I was working with one of our student teachers for language arts, who is absolutely fabulous, had this really cool project about the wolf the proposition that was about wolf reintroduction. She was working with one of our elementary schools to, like, the students at the high school level did research, and the students at the elementary school were like contributing questions that the high school students were answering through their research. And she would start and then the end project was that the high school students put together children's books based on their research and the feedback from the elementary school students. And so she would start each class with a picture book and have the students, like, just, do an analysis of the different aspects of it, because their end project is to create one themselves. And so she was reading this book. It was so fantastic. She's reading to everyone in the classroom. And then we realized she was muted for the kids who were at home. And it's like, oh, no, and I think it's people who are supposed to be in charge of the technology, like, or at least really help facilitate it in a big way. When we fail, it's like particularly painful. So I felt really bad about that one.
Especially when you're working with somebody outside, and that's so tough. Oh, I can't imagine.
She was so nice about it, but still.
I do also want to just, I appreciate that you talked about gratitude, because I think, out of a lot of things that have happened here, I mean, I know I've heard from so many students that are like, I didn't like school. I mean, they were the types that were fighting for every last snow day. They haven't stopped, by the way. But the idea of, like, okay, we kind of realize what we had, sometimes that's what it kind of takes, is to realize that not having access to a library, I mean, it's something that people took for granted. And I love the fact that they were, like, so glad to be there back in that space.
Yeah, I would have students just saying, like, thank you on the way out, which, usually when the bell rings, everyone grabs their stuff and runs, right? So there's a different community feel this year for sure. And I think very much a family feel in our building, that, like, we are all closer because we went through this together, for sure.
Awesome. Well, we'll go from one high school to another. Mara is from Fairview, right?
Yes, my name is Mara Rhodes, and I'm the librarian at Fairview High School. And yes, I'm having technical difficulties this morning with my camera, but I'm just going to go with it. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of jump from, that gratitude of where my school was. The library was the hub of the building. And because it is a physically large space, 15,000 plus square feet, it was also used as a virtual classroom for the exempt teachers. When we first came back, I think there was 7 classes in there. And so I wasn't allowed to let the students in. And it was so sad to see them, stand at the door and not be allowed to come in because there was classes going on in this space, and because of COVID and so forth. We've kind of let that go a little bit more as we've had more teachers come back, and now I'm only down to 5 classes in the space. But one of the biggest things for me was being flexible of things that were asked of me, or things that I tried to do and maybe fail at. And I was asked to figure out how to live stream athletic events. And I talked with Jared and a couple other different folks. And because when they started athletics, the parents weren't allowed to come to any of the events at one point. And so I figured it out, and we got an app, and it was able to be an awesome thing I got so many thank yous and emails from parents and grandparents and friends that couldn't be there, but could actually see their daughter play volleyball or their son play freshman basketball. And that was something that I'd never, done before, but I jumped in and through some of the support of people, my librarian group especially, was able to figure it out and provide that service for parents. And it's just been a whirlwind year, and the staff and the students have been just awesome. It does make you very grateful for your community. And of course, there's been a lot of, stress with technology and making it work and not work, and Chromebooks and mics and cameras. And it's, but, we've persevered through it. And I think we're stronger as a community and as a school district because of all the support that's been behind us too.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think, when I think about oftentimes when we're talking on communications, I'm always talking to principals about, tap those folks in your building that know something about technology. And this, again, like what a moment, like, with live streaming. I mean, you wouldn't make a connection between your work probably typically in that. And I know that the ADs were on, I think, last week. And, they were talking about, the same thing, very much the appreciation that people had for that access. And it's hard to remember, how different it was from there to here. In fact, we're going to talk in a minute about, sort of, the materials in a library and fomites and all that kind of stuff. But, at the beginning, there were so many questions and so many unknowns, but, we so appreciate the fact that you guys, those that are really techie, were able to jump into that space, because I know that that's not something that everyone has on a school staff. So really cool, Mara. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Ray, I know that you get to work with all these fabulous people, right? Tell us a little bit about your work and if you've got an example. Nope, and you are muted, just so you know.
And of course, it would be me that does that. I am Ray Sikora. I'm the Technical Services Librarian, and I get to support all of the school librarians, as well as I kind of manage the Sora Digital Library. So to keep with the cafe theme, our librarians got to be short order cooks this year. They didn't get to always do what they, their job title said. We had a shortage of subs. We had a shortage of teachers when the school year started. So half of the librarians got pulled to teach part-time or full-time. There's several schools without a librarian who are teaching full-time in a classroom. So as a group, we were short order cooks for sure. I think one of my proudest moments was during the initial shutdown. We did a one book, one district read on Sora, and we had a special deal with the publisher for Ivan, the one and only Ivan. And we had over 700 people participating, students and teachers participating in that. And that's pretty significant for a fairly new digital program, that Sora.
And it's super easy to use for anybody that's out there that hasn't really dove into Sora. It's excellent. Just like any other, online book app. I mean, it's right there. And I think it's got, if I remember right, aren't there tools as well? You can get audiobooks in there. And
yes,
if you need to hear audio parts of it, I think I want to say that was embedded in there as well.
Some of the books do have embedded audio. And then you can look up words. You can translate words. You can highlight and make notes, and you can earn badges. It's geared towards the students. It's really cool.
I'll ask one other question before we get off of this topic, since we're already on it, which is just the idea that I think one of the other cool things that I've seen you guys do is the idea that if it's a month, Black History Month or whatever, that you can pull together, sort of resources around a theme too, and have them available through there, correct?
Yes.
That's a pretty cool thing. I mean, to be able to pull people together, you don't have to necessarily pull together, books off the shelf in order to make that happen. Although I always love those displays when you go into a library. It's like, oh, I had no idea, But well, cool. Why don't we switch to kind of what we were talking about before, which is, there was right at the beginning, there was so much fear. We had so little idea about how this thing spread. And so, at the beginning, it was sort of like, I remember, we were wiping our grocery. I mean, oh my goodness, that was the longest thing. You bring home your groceries and you had to wipe them down with wipes, and then you couldn't find the wipes. And anyway, it was a big old headache. And so I imagine that, in your arena, again, like you guys are working in a place. I mean, I love seeing some of you guys sitting there in the library. Bobby, I see all the books behind you there. These books at that point, then are they a vector of carrying, oh my gosh, you're like, okay, we can't do that. So I know Ray was mentioning that one of the things that we saw right off at the beginning was this idea of a flood of then like digital stuff beyond Sora, where all these vendors were offering things. So it sounds like it was a little Wild West of tons of stuff, like suddenly on your porch of like, okay, what do we do with all this stuff and how do we send it out and prepare it for teachers? And then we'll kind of get to the second part about, some of you guys have mentioned about the idea of actually getting those materials out and then welcoming your students back. Anybody willing to start about kind of the massive digital resources that you had? Lizzie, I'll start with you.
Well, I think librarians are master curators. And so like I definitely went into hoard mode, but with all the stuff, I had lists and spreads, links and but that's not actually what our families and our teachers needed, because it was too much. And so really trying to understand what the need was and then providing like those solutions in a much smaller dose was what was needed at my school. And maybe like, I'm sure it's different everywhere and people were sharing widely. Everything was available and like all the amazing read alouds that authors were doing. But families were also overwhelmed. So it's like, what do the teachers need? And then what do the families need? And so really like parsing that down. I worked with a lot of different grade levels to bring that down every week. And then I put a lot of effort into our website to make sure that there's sort of like a one-stop hub for vetted, safe sites for kids and families.
When I remember that those first days too, that the idea, like we had to shift so quick. And so then again, it was like, okay, how do we pull this all together? And then exactly what you were saying, like this overwhelmed feeling. And then yet, it's like this dichotomy between some parents that just could not get enough and were, really wanting more. And then, other ones that were like, okay, I don't know what to do with all this stuff that you're giving me. I mean, it could be a little overwhelming for folks, I think. Shoshana, what did it look like in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, so I am so glad that Lizzie started off by saying that, because it was exactly the same here for us. And, there were on the one hand, like some of the databases and things that are usually so costly were expensive. And it was like, okay, I cannot email the entire social studies department and tell them right now because they're trying to set up their revisit system, and so it's just, I think letting some of that go so that we could be more effective in the moment. And then as time went on, I had a great and really rewarding relationship with our one-to-web coordinator, and we did weekly drop-ins. So we would choose one tool each week and we would just have like a building level training on it. And some staff members helped us as well. We actually have like one of our science teachers is really like a certified Pear Deck trainer. So like she was able to help us run the Pear Deck training. And at first we chose things that were supported by the district, like Pear Deck. And then more like towards the middle of this year, we started branching off to some other tools. We felt like people are ready for this. Like they've really got a hold on it. I think we've all come a really long way. And so the attendance for those is pretty good. And that was, I think, a nice way to handle it, because it was sort of like opt in, like you just show up if you feel like you can take one more tool,
Well, I love that too, because sometimes it takes pioneers, somebody that's willing to put their toe in the water and then can see, show other people that it's possible. That makes a lot of sense, I think. Jared.
I definitely wanted to echo some of what both Lizzie and Shoshana said. A lot of us are the webmasters at our schools, and we are master curators, and something that I think pride ourselves on. And there was a lot of that, and I kind of saw myself as like a first line of defense filter against the barrage of stuff coming out. And Randy, I appreciated that you mentioned that like a lot of vendors took advantage of this opportunity to reach out and in many cases offer some free services. And I think we also, in addition to just kind of slowing the flow of resources that were becoming available and organizing them for staff and families, we were also kind of that first line of defense in being mindful about student data privacy and other kind of factors that we have to think about when offering tools up and resources up to students. Because while it's great that a lot of companies offer some free resources and free access to their platforms. There is an end game for them as well when they do that. So I think we fill this gap in the schools of being maybe because we're the ones who are reached out to by a lot of these companies, but we also have the opportunity to sift through them and be that initial filter.
I think, and one of the things that you also brought to mind too is that I think there was this real push for everyone to like scan stuff in too, and I can imagine that you guys had to probably be a little bit of a filter of like, there's this thing called copyright infringement, like certain things can't probably be scanned and put into the system, and the ramifications. Like it's one thing for a day or two, to just take care of emergency business, but oh my goodness, like the world that's opening up there is kind of crazy. Mara.
Yeah, believe it or not, a lot of the authors were giving permission for some of that to happen, Randy, during the pandemic, which was really, really nice to see. But one of the things I wanted to jump on with Lizzie was we were inundated with so many free resources. And I think I tried to curb myself from sending so many emails to the staff. I think that was one of the biggest kind of complaints was they were getting so much email already, and one more email to add to that, even though it was, might have been really a great email from you with resources and so forth. I think they were just so overwhelmed that you had to, just pull yourself back and think of other creative ways.
I cannot tell you how many times we in communications have to play that role of being sort of a little bit of that, barrier of, I know it's really important, and yet right now it's just not the right time. So it's great. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that you guys had to kind of play that role as well. It's something that really families require or staff need if they're overwhelmed. So kind of important thing. I do want to get back to the idea of this like craziness with, so, we don't know if books can carry a disease. So like essentially like, you have to put them into a basket for 72 hours, I think was the original sort of deal. How did you guys finally make that leap? I mean, I know that a lot of the guidance, sort of kind of as research kind of gathered, we realized that it really wasn't about that. You didn't have to, again, wipe down your groceries and all that kind of stuff. It was a little bit safer to kind of act in that kind of deal. How did you guys finally kind of go, we feel comfortable enough to be able to venture into this arena? Kim.
Well, we started by quarantining the books. So we would take we were still doing checkout, but what we would do is we would have sort of like systems. And of course, lots of librarians were in the same boat. And so we got lots of input from people all over the world, really. And there was also lots of research specifically on COVID on library books.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Ray would know. It was the ALA did some like research on that. I can't remember specifically.
The ALA did some work, and some of the universities did work on how does the virus survive on paperbacks, on Mylar covers, on hard covers.
It's good to have that hard data though, so you can kind of act off of something, a fact, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we would do is we would take them and we would just hold them. And also like we got information as to like how we had to hold them. Like you couldn't just put them in a pile in a basket somewhere. You like had to have them, propped up right on a shelf or whatever. And then we would sort of just kind of rotate what day they were on. Like they were on day 1 of quarantine or day 2 or day 3. So and then thankfully that didn't last too long, but it really was everybody's sort of decision as to when to move away from that or how to evolve that. But that's how we did it in both my libraries. Is we would just have shelves, and you would just sort of go, okay, well this shelf is quarantined. The kids can't check them out. I finally, once I returned in person, I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, if it came from someone's home, I would let it sit. And if it was within the library, I would call it good. But it was sort of you just kind of have to make those decisions as you're going to see, because you wind up with kids being very frustrated because they can't get the books that they want because all the same books are in demand.
Oh, I bet.
So.
Well, you imagine that probably has been a concern over time. I mean, with public library books, I mean, but it's not something that, I don't know, do people wipe down the covers when they get the hardback? I just have never really thought about that before pre-pandemic.
It depends on how you want to do it. There's lots of ways. And like there's the lights and there's all sorts of things that people have done to try to sterilize the books or make them safer without destroying them.
And I'm going to go to Bobby next, but before I do that, Kim, you were talking about the fact that you were exempt early on. So do you have to work with other staff at the building in order to sort of, pretty please, can you leave these ones out on the step, kind of feel to it? Or what did that even look like?
So at one of the buildings, I did have a para who was able to, I was able to work with her directly and get her to kind of manage pulling the books, but I would manage the instructing the kids how to select books, and like when they did select using our menus that one of our fabulous librarians came up with. I would take that information and input it into our library system so that the kids would get books. So it was kind of fun because I was able to see like what the kids were kind of excited about. And then I was able to pick books that I thought were a good fit for whatever they were working on, because it was a little more open-ended. So they'd say like, I want a funny book, or I want a scary book, or something like that. And so I was able to really curate and give them stuff that I thought was really a good fit for them. So that was great. In my other building, we kind of just were on hold. And then eventually we had somebody that helped them in the library itself. But the teachers were used to running checkout over there. So I put together some sort of like systems and rules for them. And then they kind of took it from there until I was able to return in person.
Thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate that. Bobby.
Yeah, Kim did a great job describing the different, rules and protocols that we had that, ebbed and flowed along the way. And we have a super supportive crew with TLs led by Ray all across the district. So it was really helpful to compare notes and figure out, which systems were effective and not. And to me, what was really highlighted is, now I like reflect on the year, is what Shoshana mentioned earlier about the mindset of the kids. Like when I think back, when we first were able to open our library, some of us were lucky enough to do that. Sorry, my son's calling me. He probably needs the computer password.
Oh no.
His Monday launch activities, I'm sure. Because that's what my kids do every Monday morning, first thing. Sorry, this is live. I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, Ben. But, they come in and we ask them to do things that are just unnatural. Like, okay, you can check out library books, but you can't touch any of them. You need to look through. If you touch one, then you have to bring it over to me and put it in a special bin, right? And it's like asking kids, like going to the dessert tray, right? Only take the one brownie, right? You can't, but the thing is kids, like, they just like develop that mantra of like, oh, well, and they were really excited to be able to be in the space and check out books. And then when we were able to, dial back some of the restrictions and said, hey, you know what, as long as it stays in the library, you can work on putting it back on the shelf. Or when we were able to stop the timeout of books, we called it, they couldn't believe it, and so they get a lot of credit for being really flexible this year, because they couldn't do a lot of things they're used to, like in-person reserves. didn't really work, because you can't reserve a book that I know is stored in the back room that's not going to be available for 72 hours. So the inventory and the computer system was pretty meaningless for them this year. And then they just kind of rolled with it, which was made them, I think, really gracious when things had a resemblance of normal towards the end of the year, where they could, their friend returns a book and then they can check it out that same day. And they're like, what? I can do that? This is amazing. So
again, just sort of an appreciation for the things that we just took for granted before.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right, because I remember as a kid that the key question was how many photos or illustrations are inside the book, and that would be a key factor of whether or not it was that book or that book that I would pick up. So not being able to get inside, I mean, you're leaving a lot to chance there as a kid.
Very true, Randy.
I know that's not what it's all about, but well, I got into television, so I guess that says something too. But again, the idea of a reservation system at all, I mean, that wasn't really baked into what you guys would typically do. I mean, unlike public libraries where people are reserving, I don't know, Harry Potter because you can't get a hold of it, right, Jared?
Oh, sorry, that might have been a little premature to raise my hand, but I just wanted to. I mean, it's true. We had the system in place, but at least not in my end, I hadn't used the reservation feature of that system before, and it was a big lift to get everybody up to speed and to train everybody and to kind of keep some momentum with that. So in addition to, I visited with every class to kind of walk through and show the process and make sure kids felt comfortable, but even still getting that to stick was a bit of a challenge. So I was trying to think creatively, and I worked with some local businesses to get some donations, and I ran like a weekly raffle for kids who reserved books online, and that actually was a successful. It was more successful than I expected it to be. Kids got really into their crumble cookie gift cards and things like that they could win. But I think all of us just had to be really creative in how we encourage students to use those systems that they hadn't used for that purpose before.
I love that. So the same kind of thing that we used to have as kids, like read it with Pizza Hut, you guys were doing sort of with and crumble cookies. I mean, like
I can miss the Pizza Hut coupons though.
Kim.
I have actually always used the reservation system, but I really had to beef it up and be more robust about it. But the thing that I realized as I was doing it is sort of how clumsy our current database is when it comes to the consumer facing side of it. I mean, other parts too, but this in particular, I was like, oh gosh, the kids really had a hard time just browsing. So just looking at the library lookup on Insignia, I had to try to go through some extra things so that I could make it a little more pleasing and exciting for the kids to look at. It's not like a bookstore or a public library website, and it was like if the kid knew specifically what they wanted, it was pretty easy to find it. But if they just didn't know, there weren't great categories for it unless we put them in. And so that was a really eye-opening experience for me. I was able to say, oh, okay, well, I need to curate lists that I can put up there for the kids, and I need to make sure that that we add as many new books as possible so that those can be up front and center for them to see, and various things like that. But we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have. So it was kind of interesting to realize how much better it could be if one day we can make that happen.
It's funny that those systems, there's no real reason to upgrade them until you're in the middle of something like this, where it's oh, so very apparent. And it sounds like, again, like teachers, that you were helping to kind of do the kinds of things that you would normally do if you were standing next to a kid in the library. Oh, what are you interested in? But you had to kind of think about it completely differently. Lizzie. Oh, and you are muted, just so you know.
Okay. I'm super excited about the sort of discovering the reserve system, both for me and students, and actually teachers who now have, like, they've learned through me teaching the kids about how to use that system. And one of the things I feel like is it's kind of the best arena to practice search skills. Like, it's super safe. And you have to think about keywords or favorite authors. And it is sort of a clunky system. So the more tech savvy kids, they can figure it out. And I'm really excited going into the future that now as a school, this is just another resource for us. It's a great fit for some kids. I had kids who were they just like to online shop, and there are all these books that they can online shop for free. And so I'm really excited about that for the future too. It was indispensable. The library has been closed for browsing at our school for the whole year. And so 2nd through 5th graders were using this reserve system, and really the 2nd graders used it more than any other grade level. So I have full confidence that not all of them, but a lot of them can navigate it. And I did curate a lot of lists geared towards those younger students so that they're just on display and they can just click. So anyway.
Perfect. Shoshana, and then I'll go to Amara.
I just wanted to highlight that this was, like, sort of, I think for a lot of schools, the opposite of a pancake, because it was something that, like, our library system insignia, like, yes, it's clunky, like everyone, like Kim and Lizzie and everyone's saying, but it does have this feature and it works. And we were able to put it in place for students, like, in April last year, I think, for many of us. And so students were really able to start getting resources. And I know for the students that I have that are still in home learning, like, we are rolling out a summer reading program now and allowing students to borrow books for the summer. And and just encouraging that. And it's so nice to be able to offer students that are still at home print materials as well. So it's kind of one of those things that has been consistent and successful, I think, across many of our schools across the board. And even I'm hearing now, like, also all K-12, right? So that's really been a nice feature.
Thank you for that. Mara.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to kind of the reserve system or so forth. And it was always there. And yes, some of our more tech savvy students have always used it. I think kind of bringing it to the masses or putting it on your website as a capability for them to actually get a physical book. And for me, it was delivery of those books. So as before, I think we didn't use it as much because we were the one-person island, whereas at the public library, they have a team of people to pull the 1,000 holds that they get a day. Whereas, at the high school, middle school, and elementary, you're the one person. And so to pull holds every morning for, a couple hundred kids would be too undaunting. But with the pandemic, I think we had that time to be able to pull the books. And for me, I delivered them to the classroom on a cart. And so a lot of times I'd bring my Chromebook with the scanner and the books and go and check in and check out books to students. I'd even pull books that were popular and have them on a cart and so the kids, it was kind of like the mobile library, I called it, coming to them. And I also did a lot of, to help the staff and especially the LA department, we checked out textbooks and under the insignia, the clunky insignia, figured out how to add assets as Chromebooks so that we could track the many, many supplies. I have about 2,500 things that I need to collect back in the next 2 weeks. And slowly they're coming in. But that was a way to, I guess, additional way of helping check out things that we wanted to come back, these $100 textbooks. I know a lot of people don't have them, but some kids wanted that print material in front of them, and having the flexibility to have those materials up at the front office for the home learners to come and pick up as well was really, really important.
Perfect. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I can imagine that some kids just want that tactile feel of a book in their hands.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Mara. Going too fast here. Bobby.
Yeah. So one other opportunity that came up with the reservation system is to really focus on equitable access to the materials for kids, because here at Crestview, I was fortunate enough to be working in the library most of the time and have it open for kids. Not all my colleagues got that opportunity, but then it created another situation where there's kids in person who get to check out almost every week. But then we have online learners at every single grade level, and so with the reservation system and those Google Meets, it required me to kind of change my approach and make sure that they had access as well. So some kids were using the online access, but other kids, because of whatever barrier they might be facing, that didn't work for them. And so with some of the meets, especially with my youngers, another kindergarten story. I mean, we could tell kindergarten stories forever. They're hilarious. But it would literally be a conversation and a pen and paper. And in this one particular class, I mean, I would be doing a reading lesson and they would interrupt and say, do we get to tell you which books we want to check out? And we would like take a walk around the library with the Chromebook and say, hey, here's a turtle bin, here's the ocean animals. And they would just tell me which book they wanted me to pick out. And then I would check it out and put it out front. And so really, kind of changing our style and bending based on what the kids need to make sure that every single kid, no matter their situation this year, could get a book in their hands.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that is just exemplary. I think that's why we're here, right? Is to take care of kids, to meet their needs. I do want to mention before we run out of time here, this has been such a great conversation, that Ray, you guys have put together a little bit of a showcase. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. Let's see here. Will it let me do it? Try that one more time. Okay. So by the way, if you want to go see it, I do have a link for it. It's bit.ly/BVSD Showcase. And then this is sort of what it looks like. Ray, do you want to kind of talk about what this is? Let's see here. Got too many windows open.
Ray, you're muted.
I was going to say, I could not hear you.
I'd keep doing that. I wanted to give all of the librarians a chance to showcase what they've done this year, even if they are in a classroom or if they are not in the library at all. They still have contributed as librarians to the success of their school. And so this showcase, I asked them to answer 3 questions. What was the most challenging thing this year? Because everybody's got a challenge story. And then what is the proudest accomplishment? And then especially for librarians who people think of as a brick and mortar physical thing, we had to pivot and be digital and not hands-on. What do you want to bring forward from that experience to next year when we are all in person? We have 48 librarians. And when I checked this morning, we had 30 of them have been able to add a slide to this presentation. So I welcome and encourage teachers, staff to take a look at what has your librarian done this year. There's some amazing, phenomenal stuff going on. We talked a lot about the reservation system, but also I wanted to point out we had to cover a lot of digital citizenship in an equitable manner for all of the students, some of whom had not ever been online other than in a school classroom situation. And so pre-K through 12, we did digital citizenship lessons. We've done that first, like I think Jared said, first line of defense for technology questions for the students. I just love looking at all this slideshow.
No, I was going to say, I love the ones that are like, hey, this is all I got. I've got no graphics. And then Mara, I think your emoji that we've been seeing throughout the morning it's embedded into yours. You see some personality of the folks that are here as well as the work that they've done. It's It's really cool to see how many things are in here. I do want, this is actually a good segue. I'd love to kind of go around the room and sort of give everybody an opportunity as I stop presenting here to talk about, you know, one last thing that again is either, you know, maybe it's from your showcase, something that really turned out well, something that you're going to apply into the future, you know, would be something we'd love to hear about. And we'll just kind of do a little round robin here. And I'll start with Kim, if that's okay.
Great. Yeah, I did want to say, in looking at that slideshow, I was reminded that as teacher librarians, we're sort of like the Swiss Army knife of the school, you know, like we have to cover all kinds of different things. Many teacher librarians, myself included, had to stop doing library stuff in order to teach a grade level, and then we had to switch and do whatever. So, I mean, I've been tapped to do interventions and enrichments and whatever it is. So basically, we just have to be ready to do whatever it is that the principal or the staff or the students need from us at any given time. So that's something that I think can be easy to forget, but because it's not just about the books, we do all kinds of things to support the schools. And because we have the access to all of the kids and all of the staff, we sort of have a little bit of leverage to be able to do those kinds of things, which is one of the awesome bits about this role.
Awesome. Mara, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, we definitely are the Swiss Army knife, and I think sometimes we are a little bit forgotten. And if you're a little more shy or quiet and not as boastful, sometimes when they're asked, "Oh, can you figure that out?" Sure, I can do it. One of the things I guess that I was able to do, speaking of books, was to have the time to reflect and actually. If you've ever been in the Fairview Library during a day when it's full, it's hard to get to some of the spaces. And so I was kind of given that gift of being able to look at my books and move them around without having so many bodies in the space and having some of that time to do that, especially Mondays. And so what I did is I moved all the nonfiction books into more of a bookstore model and was able to label them and sort them and scan them and so forth, which I never would have had that time during the school year. It would be a project that I would have to solely do during the summer. So I was able to, I couldn't do it all in, you know, I had to do it over weeks of time, but I was really proud that I was able to accomplish that. And I'm already having kids looking at the books in a different way, like, oh, those are where all of the psychology books or the personal growth. And so I really, I'm proud that I was able to kind of do that and accomplish it and get it finished, whereas we're always picking up things to do and accomplish and never being able to, you know, you have to put it on the back burner and just wait and wait and wait till you have that moment to devote some time to do it. So I was proud that I was able to do that. And with some of the other high school librarians early when the pandemic happened, we created some book trailers. We had time to read and we had time to make these trailers and put them on our website or out to tweet them out. And that was really a fun thing that kind of pulled some of the high school librarians together and some of the books that we were reading and ones that we thought some of our teams would be interested in reading. So that was really a fun thing that we did.
I love that idea. Did you have the guy from the movie, you know, the movies do the dramatic voice underneath it?
Well, it's funny. It's funny, you know, you think, oh, we'll make a book trail. It'll be fast and simple, but then you end up spending so much time because you want to get it just right and have that intro music or the fade out. And there's so many, I mean, Shoshana did some awesome trailers as well. I mean, it's like everyone had like a unique kind of style to their book trailer. And we did them for a couple weeks and yeah, we have quite a collection on my little virtual library. I have the book on the shelves, and some of them are my high school friends' trailers and so forth. So yeah, it's great.
Oh, that's so cool. So much fun. Shoshana, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, so thanks. Like Maura, I had time to divide my fiction collection. So now that's fully genrefied, and I'm so, so happy that was done because I got through a little part of it during the school year last year, and I was able to use some of the time with the empty library to really finish that up, and nonfiction's next. So actually, I'm really excited to visit Maura's library this coming week to see how she did it and learn from her. And also this year I was pulled to teach a class. I co-taught Avid 9, and it was amazing. I was so, so grateful for the connection to those students. And now I know this huge group of rising freshmen. So like I'll be sophomores next year, and I'm just like so happy that I have relationships with them and that they'll be in the library. And I won't be teaching Avid next year. I'll be returning to the library full-time, which is a really good decision for our school. And I feel like very supported in that, but I also am a little sad to let that class go. And I'm excited that the Avid program does have reading as one of the cornerstones for, its success for students. And so we're going to integrate a reading incentive program with them. And so that's probably that's a collaboration that I don't know would have existed had I not been integrated into that program this year. And so I really am very happy about that.
That is really cool. I appreciate that. Jared.
While everybody has been just so amazing in being creative and resourceful throughout the library closures that we, experienced in different ways this year, what this all highlighted for me was just how important our physical spaces are to the community. And like others, I've had the opportunity to reflect a bit on the spaces and spend some time reorganizing some things and rethinking some spaces. So I've been doing some rebranding and kind of naming things in our building or in our library. I've been building out, I'll be offering a multimedia production course next year to our school, which we haven't had in a while. And I've been kind of building out a space for that. I might be reaching out to you, Randy, at some point. Just things like that. So, and being able to reflect on the needs of the school, staff and students alike, and spend some time to create the spaces that we need and want. So I'm excited to use those in their full capacity moving forward.
Excellent. Lizzie.
Yeah, I'm super excited for kids to come back into the library because I've done similar reorg. But for next year, I think my big sort of goals and excitement, I'm really excited to collaborate around the YAG with our teachers. And I think it's a great sort of reset opportunity for the library and for that collaboration. Just it's going to be a big new year. And then I'm also thinking a lot about what does technology and technology integration and digital citizenship and research, what does that all look like now? Because everyone's leveled up and everyone this year was really overwhelmed. So there was a certain point where like nothing new, no more new. and so being mindful of that, but like Seesaw was designed to work in classrooms. It's a classroom tool. So now like I'm excited to explore what that will look like in the classroom instead of through this sort of online situation. So I also taught third grade social studies and science this year for our online only students. So I learned a lot about like hands-on the teaching in this online environment and the limitations that come along with it that are just really real. So yeah, anyway.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the strategic plan. We were going to try to hit that as a question, but you guys are so tied into being resource and supporting teachers and that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I'm glad that we didn't have to miss that. So thank you for that. Bobby.
I knew you were going to call on me because the vacuum's coming by. But you know what? That's what we do. Shoshana and Jared, I decided to have some fourth graders review genres and start to help me genreify the fiction section. It's messy. That's all I'm going to say. I think maybe in a couple months, let's talk. But right now, oh gosh, it's a mess. But we'll embrace it. I think the thing that I'll take into next year it has been a concept that I've heard my colleagues highlight today, and that's to lead and support in a very targeted manner. We could create the most amazing library environment or a website or tools, but if we turn around and nobody's following, we're not providing the right support. And so just to echo my colleagues' theme all through today, that I'm really excited to use our new instructional framework and the YAG and more in-person time to really collaborate with teachers and find out what they need and how we can support them and help them teach lessons. I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm really excited to kind of move forward in that really directive way with them.
I love, I mean, we've used so many words to describe you guys today. Swiss Army knife might be my favorite, but short order cooks, I kept thinking about special forces, and I think that kind of really goes to what you're talking about of the folks that can, kind of support the different elements of the school and really make sure that we get to these big thoughts that we've got, like the strategic plan, just phenomenal. Ray, I do want to give you a chance to be sort of our last speaker. And I know one of the things that we want to mention too is to those that might be watching is that, these resources also continue into the summer. I don't want to forget to ask you about that as we close up here.
Absolutely. Like Shoshana has talked about, Centaurus has a summer reading program. Each librarian has their own summer learning program with Sora. Each student can create their own summer reading program with Sora. We will continue to have that open 24/7, and kids can continue checking out books or audiobooks on Sora. The teachers, staff also have access to all of that stuff. At the secondary level, the Language Arts and Humanities group adopted Mac and Via, which is also a digital platform. So secondary students have access to all of the books on Mac and Via as well all summer. So keep reading.
Keep reading. I think that's the most important part. Anything else you want to say about these amazing people? Oh, Lizzie wants to say something real quick.
And shout out to our local libraries, which is where we're directing our students to go borrow the physical books from this summer.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a partnership. Obviously, there's a lot of folks that we weren't able to have on today's show that are shining out there. We thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. Ray, anything else that we haven't said that we want to say?
I think we've covered it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to share my screen one last time, not to belabor the point, but the showcase that Ray and the team have put together here is amazing. And so I do want to give you a chance that please write this down, bit.ly, that's bit.ly/BVSD showcase. You can go through all the amazing stuff that the schools have put in there, and feel free to have us be an introduction. I love the fact that everybody was talking about going and seeing each other's libraries, and I'm sure that they would not mind if you see something really interesting in there to answer an email or the phone and say, ask questions about, hey, how did you do that? I also do want to mention that we're going to be launching a little bit of an internal communications feedback loop. Weekly Wake Up was actually inspired by your feedback through the whole effort right at the beginning of the school year when we were trying to figure out how we could come back in person, and teachers and the feedback that we had was we need more communication. And I just want to give a shout out to Stephanie Schroeder, who had the idea of, how about we have a place where people can actually come and ask their correct questions directly to Boulder County Public Health or, to leaders or whatever. And so this is something to that. And we want to think about how we can, just like the teacher librarians have been thinking about how they're going to apply things for next year, the communications team wants to hear your feedback so that we can do that well moving forward. And again, I just want to thank all of our panelists for joining us for the Weekly Wake Up today. Just inspiring to get to hear all the work that they've done and the work that they're going to continue to do into the future. We appreciate all of you. And to all of our employees, thank you so much for all that you do for the Boulder Valley School District. 2 weeks left. I know that we can make it. Thank you for your efforts, and we hope that you have a great week. Take care now.